English Channel, June 6, 1944. You are crammed, shoulder to shoulder inside a flat-bottomed Higgins boat, pitching violently over the black waves of the channel. The air inside this steel box is unbreathable, a nauseating stew of exhaust, wet wool, and the sour stench of seasickness. Your fingers are completely numb, trembling as you try to peel the wet paper from a single cigarette. It's soaked with freezing sea spray. You blow on it gently, a mundane, desperate effort to save something already ruined. Beside you, Miller reaches over and snatches the soggy tobacco from your hands, tossing it over the armored side into the foaming water. Miller is a veteran of North Africa. His jaw works methodically on a piece of stale chewing gum, his eyes fixed on the gray fog ahead.
"Don't try to save the dead, kid,"
Miller says. On this beach, blood isn't worth as much as time. You swallow hard, the taste of salt and bile sharp in your throat. You instinctively touch your heavy medical pouch, brushing against the one clean thing left in this boat. A pristine, snow-white roll of surgical gauze. It was a parting gift from your girlfriend, a nursing student back in Ohio. In this vomiting steel cage, that bright white cotton feels like it belongs to an entirely different universe. Miller glances down at it. He stops chewing. "Keep it tucked away, because today you're going to see it change color." Suddenly, the engine pitch screams. The boat lurches, grinding against a hidden sandbar. A sharp buzzer cuts through the mist. You brace yourself, expecting to see a quiet stretch of French sand. But as the heavy steel ramp slams down into the surf, the air simply explodes. You don't see the beach. You only see the men in the front rows vanish into a sudden, blinding storm of machine gun fire, thrown violently backward as the morning air fills with the smell of vaporized copper and torn flesh. The momentum of the terrified men behind you shoves you off the metal ramp and into the churning ocean. You hit the water, and the temperature punches the breath completely out of your lungs. It is a paralyzing shock, like icy knives driving directly into your chest. The English Channel is only chest deep, but the sudden weight of your soaked wool uniform and your heavy medical pack violently drags you under the surface. Salt water floods your throat. You are drowning before you even reach the battlefield. You struggle blindly in the freezing dark, your numb fingers tearing desperately at your webbing. You are forced to unbuckle and abandon your heavy utility belt just to keep from sinking. You finally burst back into the air, gasping violently for oxygen. The air above the water is thick and foul, a suffocating mixture of sulfur, burning diesel, and raw cordite. You push forward, fighting the sucking sand and the freezing current. A young private running just 2 feet in front of you vanishes in a blinding flash of concussive force. A horrifying wave of hot mud, freezing salt water, and warm blood splatters directly across your face. The shock wave throws you violently backward, crashing you down into the crimson-stained surf. You scramble to your hands and knees in the shallows, wiping the grit and gore from your eyes. You look down at your shaking hands. They are completely empty. You realize, with a sudden and paralyzing clarity, that you do not have a rifle. You have absolutely no weapon to fire back at the concrete bunkers raining death upon you. Your eyes track slowly down to your left arm. Painted brightly against your wet olive-drab sleeve is a stark red cross. In the blinding, mechanical slaughter of Omaha Beach, it is no longer a symbol of mercy. It is nothing more than a brightly colored target. You drag your shivering body out of the red surf and collapse behind a rusted Czech hedgehog, a jagged cross of heavy steel beams meant to rip open landing craft. You press your cheek violently into the freezing wet earth. Every time you shift your weight, German machine gun fire sparks off the metal just inches above your helmet. You are paralyzed. You cannot advance. You cannot retreat. This is the true horror of the beach. Not the running, but the agonizing, suffocating wait. For 45 uninterrupted minutes, you are forced to lie completely motionless in the freezing sludge, biting down on your lips so hard that you taste copper, terrified to move a single millimeter while the world ends around you. At Dog Green Sector, the interlocking fire from German 88mm artillery and MG-42 machine guns is mathematically calibrated to eradicate 60% of an advancing infantry company in under 10 minutes. For an unarmed combat medic pinned without hard cover, the statistical probability of survival is an absolute 0. A mortar shell impacts directly against the sandbag just yards away. The concussive blast lifts you violently off the ground, burying your helmet under a heavy shower of wet sand and pulverized rock. You aggressively shake the dirt from your eyes, your ears ringing with a maddening, high-pitched whine. You look back toward the water. The explosion has thrown Miller completely out of his cover. He is thrashing in the open surf, his right leg severely mangled below the knee. Arterial blood pulses rhythmically into the salt water, instantly dyeing the foamy tide a thick, terrifying crimson. Miller writhes in the mud, screaming wordlessly over the roar of the artillery as he extends a desperate, trembling hand toward your iron shield. A medical sergeant grabs your wet shoulder, violently pointing toward a motionless body sprawled 15 meters away in the open sand. It is another combat medic. "We are out of morphine!" he screams over the deafening artillery. "Go!" You are forced to abandon your iron sanctuary. You press your stomach into the freezing sludge and begin to crawl. There is no crater. There is no cover. It is just you and an exposed, endless stretch of slaughter. The coarse, wet sand aggressively tears through your olive-drab uniform, ripping the raw skin beneath. Every single machine gun tracer tearing through the gray mist feels explicitly aimed at your spine. In the middle of a colossal invasion force of thousands, you have never felt so utterly, terrifyingly alone. You reach the fallen medic, your shaking, blood-slick hands tearing the morphine syringe from his webbing. You scramble backward, dragging your exhausted body back to the jagged hedgehog where Miller lies. But when you return, the veteran is terrifyingly still. His face is completely drained of blood, his skin the color of wet ash. He stares blankly at the pristine roll of white gauze still clutched in your trembling hand. He attempts a weak, reassuring smile, but his breath is already gone. Clinging to a desperate, mundane hope, your hand instinctively reaches into his soaked chest pocket. You pull out his stale pack of chewing gum. You fumble with the wrapper, trying to force a piece into his mouth, trying to make him chew, trying to keep his mind awake, just like on the landing craft. But as you press the ration to his pale lips, Miller's freezing, heavy hand slips from his chest and drops lifelessly into the red surf. The absolute, suffocating stillness of his body suddenly rushes in, completely drowning out the roaring machine guns. Miller is gone. You look down at the bright crimson blood now permanently ruining your pristine white gauze. The freezing tide is rising fast behind you, threatening to drown every wounded man trapped on the shore. How much longer can you hide in the mud before the ocean swallows you too? The world shrinks to a blurry tunnel of gray smoke and flying sand. Your eyes burn from the alkaline sting of explosives. You grind your teeth, the coarse beach sand crunching sickeningly in your mouth. Desperate cries for help echo across the shoreline, but your eardrums are completely blown out. The only thing you can actually hear is the violent, panicked thudding of your own heart threatening to break your ribs. Through the suffocating haze, you spot a young replacement private thrashing frantically at the water's edge. His heavy infantry pack acts like an anchor, dragging him face first into a flooded mortar crater. You could stay down. You could press your face into the mud behind the cold steel and wait for the armor to arrive. No one would blame you, but you watched the salt water rise over his helmet. You ripped the chin strap from your jaw, violently throwing your steel helmet into the mud. You abandon your cover and sprint directly back into the freezing, bullet-torn surf. You crash into the icy waves, grabbing his webbing. He screams in absolute terror, thrashing so violently he nearly pulls you under. You drag his heavy body onto the slick sand. His leg is torn wide open. You rip the blood-soaked roll of once white gauze from your pouch, pressing your crimson hands violently into his agonizing wound. Blood isn't worth as much as time. Stay awake! The boy gasps, his eyes snapping wide open in shock. You grab his collar, hauling him backward through the sludge just as a devastating line of machine gun fire shreds the water exactly where you stood an instant before. You collapse against the base of the shingle seawall, the world exploding into a blinding shower of rock above your head. Florida, August 1975. The deafening roar of the artillery has long since faded, replaced by the soft, warm breeze of the Gulf Coast. You are an old man now, a retired pediatrician. You stand on the edge of a peaceful beach, watching your family gather around a picnic blanket. The air smells of salt and sunscreen, entirely masking the phantom scents of cordite and diesel that have haunted your sleep for 30 years. Your young grandson, his laughter carrying over the gentle surf, sprints carelessly into the shallow water. But suddenly, he stops. He stumbles backward, lifting his small foot. He has stepped on a jagged, hidden shell. A single, thin ribbon of bright red blood drops into the pristine white seafoam. Instantly, your breath is violently choked off. The warm Florida sun disappears. The suffocating, metallic taste of freezing salt water and copper aggressively floods the back of your throat. You stand completely paralyzed in the warm sand, staring at the crimson tide. Your trembling fingers blindly grope at your linen shirt pocket. You are trying to reach for a simple, pristine, white adhesive bandage, a modern echo of a ruined roll of gauze from a lifetime ago. But your hands are shaking so uncontrollably that you cannot even open the tiny wrapper. Your grandson looks up at you, tears welling in his eyes. "Grandpa, I'm scared of blood." You squeeze your eyes shut against the fading sunset. You cannot comfort him. You cannot move. In the suffocating silence of your own mind, the cruelest truth of history finally washes over you. The war ended decades ago, but Omaha Beach never actually let you walk ashore.